Hi, I'm Becky from Let's Make Geek Stuff, and today we'll be making this simplified Mandalorian helmet out of inexpensive anti-fatigue EVA floor foam mats available at many hardware stores. While making any foam helmet can be a challenge, I've designed this pattern with the beginner in mind using simple tools. Whether for a Halloween costume or a fun day at the con, this is an inexpensive do-it-yourself option. Let's get started. Here's the pattern from my Etsy shop, Let's Make Geek Stuff. I've put it here on my laptop in the Adobe PDF viewer. There's one thing I wanted to make a note of when you go to print it. Make sure that this is ticked right here, actual print, actual size. Sometimes it defaults to the shrink oversized pages, and that will print the pattern too small. If you are wanting the helmet to be larger or smaller than the pattern provides, you would change the custom scale here. I provide in the instructions how to do the math to know what percentage larger or smaller you'll need to print it. These patterns are all designed to be printed on the American Standard copy paper 8.5 by 11. I'm printing here on regular copy paper, but it can be a good idea to print it on cardstock just to give you a little more stable pattern to work with. If you're a beginner to foam work, I'm assuming you don't have a workshop full of tools. So today I'm going to make this beginner Mandalorian helmet with as few tools as possible, starting out with my pattern. It's less than $10 off my Etsy shop. These are anti-fatigue floor mats available at most hardware stores in the United States. I've also seen them when I was traveling in Australia. They're $10 to $20 for a pack of 4 centimeter thick. Make sure you get the kind that has this sort of backing. There's some that have like a thicker button type backing, and those don't work nearly as well. So make sure it has a backing that you can easily sand off. You'll need some sort of rotary tool with a sanding barrel, brand new utility knife blades, contact cement, and some sort of really hot blow dryer. Okay, let's get started. In this particular pattern, there's a few pieces that need to be cut out twice, once upright and once in mirror position. So I've made sure to cut out all these notches and mark them on my pattern. I'm just using a Sharpie here. Now I need to cut out a second one, but upside down. I'm done tracing on my pattern pieces, and I've transferred, first of all these notches have been transferred, and also these letters, because that'll help us put it together, the right part with the right part. So I've transferred all those to my pattern pieces. It's important to take time to do this step. You'll be glad that you did. I've put a fresh blade on my utility knife, and I will start cutting out these pieces. Foam really dulls these knives, so as soon as it starts to snag and pull, I will replace the blade. I'm now just going to kind of massage the pieces a little to be the shape I want them to be. I don't know if this is an absolutely necessary step, but I like to do it. And you could even apply a little heat here with your blow dryer at this point. But this is going to be the center top, so I'm just going to try to get it dome shaped just with my hands. I'm going to start with the contact cement. One thing to keep in mind is that these fumes are toxic. I have my windows open, I have a fan going. You also might want to consider wearing even a protective mask when using this product. When applying this, I'm just going to make sure that I have every surface, every bit of the surface covered with the glue. Like, no, don't miss any spots. Now I'm going to wait about 10 minutes until the glue loses its shiny. You can see the glued surface has lost its shiny, so we're ready to glue together. The great thing about contact cement is it won't glue together until we push it. And even once you push it together lightly, you still have a chance to pull it apart and correct. so it's forgiving that way. Try to go really slowly, match up the notches as you go, and get these seams as even as possible. It's popping out. It's really hard to fix bad seams, so having as good a seams as you can from the get-go is the key to success. Okay, now I'm going to massage the seam a little. Yeah, that's sticking a lot better. Sometimes, especially on dry days, the foam just seems to suck the glue in. I'm doing a lot of stretching to match up those hash marks. Matching this S to the other S. And down to the bottom. All right, I'm going to massage that seam. Okay, now to the sides. The next step to do these sides is to glue together this dart. Just want to make sure I get glue all the way down in there, so I'm going to use a toothpick to do that. So something tricky here is you just have to make sure that all the glue dries, even in this really tight seam. So if you try to glue it together before it dries, it won't adhere. We can always go back and fix it if that pops out. After I massage these seams, I'm just going to let them sit for 10 minutes to make sure they adhere really well before we move on to the next step. Now that these have had a chance to cure, I'm going to heat them up and I'm going to do some mild shaping on them. Using my knee as an anvil, I've covered it with an old cloth so that I don't get any glue on my clothing. And now I'm just going to kind of bend and shape it over my knee. During this shaping process, you'll see that my seam popped open. I'm going to fix that by putting some contact cement on a toothpick. I'm going to rub it in, let it dry again, and reseal it. It should be no problem. This has got a chance to dry, so I'm going to go ahead and stick it back together. Okay, that's the shape kind of we're looking for. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and glue these pieces in. The dome is glued together, but you can see it doesn't have a really nice smooth shape. And so this is where the heating and shaping is going to come in. Again, I'm going to shape this over my knee, using my knee as like an anvil. Keep just looking at it, checking to see if it's the shape I want, and then I'll apply heat. Like I don't like it right here, so I'm going to apply more heat there. I'm just going to keep working on it till it's the shape I want. I admit that using the blow dryer rather than a real heat gun has taken a lot more effort. I still think it's doable, but if you have a heat gun, I'd use that instead. All right, I'm liking the shape of that a lot better. Maybe just one more time and it'll be where I want it to be. I feel like that's pretty good. I'm gonna let it sit here and cool completely, and then we'll move on to our next step. I do have one more step I need to do before I glue this together, and it's because I'm using the inexpensive foam. I have to Dremel down around where I'm gonna glue in the T-visor. This is so the glue will adhere better, and also I don't want this much thickness showing when I put the T-visor in, so I'm gonna probably Dremel it down about halfway. I'm going to start with about a 180 grit just so I can chew through this foam pretty fast. And then I'll probably finish off with this one. I think this is a 320 just to give it more polish. I'm going to compare the thicknesses on both sides, make sure that it looks even to me. Looks pretty good except maybe right here. And I'm going to clean up all these shads. I'm just going to clean up any ragged edges with a pair of scissors. Now I noticed doing this at this edge that I cut initially, this is going to be really visible where it lays against the T-shield, and it's a little more ragged than I would like. I'm going to take my 320 grit, I'm going to turn it on low speed, and I'm just going to go over that really fast just to smooth it out. Before I clean up this mess, I have one more thing I need to Dremel. The edge of this dome needs to be Dremeled to be a bevel. So I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna switch back to my higher grit sanding barrel. I'm trying hard not to cut through this outside edge of the dome at all, but only bevel inward to kind of take off this inner edge here. Okay. All right, that's what I'm looking for. That way, when I glue it to this, it will sit flat. If I hadn't Dremeled that off, it would sit at an angle, so that's what I'm looking for. Okay, now we're gonna glue the face masks together. Okay, now I'm gonna just try to bend this into shape. Okay, now I'm gonna glue the front. Now we're going to glue the dome to the face mask. I'm ready to glue on the dome, and this part can be a little tricky. I've made sure that I have my front of my helmet lining up. This notch in the very front will line up with this line, the front here. I've also labeled these other notches, so I'll just keep matching those up as I go. I've grabbed from the kitchen some parchment paper. That's that baking sheet paper. That's going to help me keep things from sticking before I'm ready for them to stick. I'm stretching this foam as I go to make sure the notches all line up. That back part's a little tricky. Make sure that back line lines up with that back seam. Okay, now I'm just gonna massage that seam together. Okay, the basic shell is done. I'm gonna add a little more heat to this to get everything to relax together into the new shape. I'm ready to work on the side details here. A basic shape is provided in the pattern. All the Mandalorian helmets are a little bit different in these details, so this is your chance to add your personalization. I'm going to start by cutting out the basic shapes. I'm going to keep mine pretty simple. I'm just going to add a bevel around the outside and across the bottom, and maybe a line up the middle. Now I could just use a rotary tool and grind down these edges to make a bevel, but since the bevel I want is pretty severe, I'm going to cut the bevel first with a knife and then clean it up with a rotary tool. I'm going to show you how I do that. First I bring the piece I want to bevel to the edge of a table. Now I have this metal ruler. Now the metal ruler is going to be the top of the bevel and the table edge is going to be the bottom of the bevel. So I just want to kind of estimate how large I want my bevel to be. I'm going to extend my utility knife and I'm going to brace it between those 2 points, and then I'm going to saw Be careful not to saw your fingers. All right, so that's my bevel. Looks like I'm ready for a new blade. See how that foam just kind of ripped at the end? That means my blade's getting dull. Now this curve at the top, I'm just going to have to do that by hand. Just eyeball it. Again, I'm just going to clean all this up with a rotary tool. Now I'm going to clean it up with the higher grit sanding barrel. And to be able to glue this onto my helmet, I'll need to also sand off some of this backing. Now I'm going to clean up any ragged edge just with a pair of scissors. Here's my sanded and beveled side pieces. There's no further details provided in the pattern. You can just be creative however you want your helmet to look. I've just made these little detailed pieces out of just craft foam. I thought would be cute. You could make a range finder out of a popsicle stick or just use your creativity or imagination. What I do want to do is cut a decorative line down the center of each one of my side pieces, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So I've measured out a line, and now with my box cutter I'm going to cut into it about 1/4 of an inch deep. Okay, now I'm going to heat that with my hot blow dryer, and that will cause that line to open up just a little bit. And there's the line. I'm ready to glue these on, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball where I want them on the helmet. And Draw it in with a Sharpie. I'm done adding more details to mine, but this is the time when you would add further details depending on what kind of helmet you want. You could add a stripe down the middle like the Mandalorian, or any sort of details here on the front. You could add anything here on the cheek. You could add the vent detail in the back. You know, it's really up to you. It's your helmet. Be creative, go crazy. Well, you've reached the end of part 1. Congratulations on making it this far. Check out part 2 where I talk about how to prepare your foam for painting, how to make some templates, and how to install the T-shield. See you there.